Kei'Mani Latigue was, by all accounts, a remarkable young girl. At 13, she was described by those who knew her as phenomenal, a helper with an old soul, wise beyond her years. She navigated the halls of Spring Elementary School with a quiet intelligence, earning her place on the honor roll. Basketball was a passion. She loved playing the game. Yet, beneath the surface of a typical 7th grader, Kei'Mani's life was more complex than many realized. She had 5 younger siblings and had been living with her maternal grandmother, Dorothy Latigue, for about 5.5 years. Dorothy had officially become her legal guardian in early 2024. The weekend of March 15, 2025, began like many others. Kei'Mani's father, 33-year-old Darnell Jones, who also went by Darnell Ogletree, picked her up from Dorothy's home on Elm Street in Toledo, Ohio. The plan, approved by Dorothy, was for Kei'Mani to visit her mother, Tiara Caston. Tiara later recalled the visit fondly. "It was just me loving on my kid. You know, we played video games, we talked mess. But it's all love." It was a rare, joyful interlude. The exact timeline of Kei'Mani's return to her grandmother's house would later become a point of contention and confusion. Darnell Jones initially told authorities that he brought Kei'Mani back to Dorothy's home on either March 16th or the early hours of March 17th. According to his account, later that same night, which would have been very late on March 16th or into the early morning of the 17th, depending on the exact day of return, Kei'Mani called him. She was scared, he said, believing someone was trying to break into the house. Darnell stated that he, along with his cousin, Colipede Jones-Dixon, drove over to Elm Street to check on her. He claimed they stayed for about an hour. In a public statement, Darnell said, "I came over here because she said that it seemed like somebody was trying to break into the house. Me and my cousin, we sat over here and we left around like 12:30. This would have been 12:30 a.m. The critical ambiguity, however, was whether this was the morning of Monday, March 17th, or Tuesday, March 18th. This discrepancy, seemingly small at first, would soon become a significant point as investigators tried to piece together the last hours of Kei'Mani Latigue's young life. The question of what truly happened after that late-night visit hung heavy in the air, a prelude to a discovery that would send shockwaves through their Toledo community. The morning of Tuesday, March 18th, 2025, dawned with a chilling sense of unease for Dorothy Latigue. She worked night shifts, and when she arrived home to the 2000 block of Elm Street around 9:40 a.m., something was immediately, terribly wrong. The first sign was the front door. It was unlocked. As she stepped inside, the faint but distinct smell of gas prickled her nostrils. Her heart began to race. A quick search revealed the source. The stove had been left on. Dorothy's gaze swept through the house, taking in other unsettling details. Kei'Mani's belongings, items the 13-year-old never went anywhere without, were still there. Her glasses, essential for her vision, lay abandoned. Her keys were also in the house. It was as if Kei'Mani had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind the very things she needed to navigate the world. Then, Dorothy's eyes fell upon a scene that amplified her dread. On the floor of the dining room lay Kei'Mani's pajamas and underwear. This was peculiar, deeply out of character for Kei'Mani, who, according to her grandmother, never changed her clothes in that part of the house. A rug inside the home had also been displaced, adding to the sense of disarray. There were things in the floor that should not have been, Dorothy would later recount. That's what caused the alarm. Panic began to claw at her. Dorothy frantically grabbed her phone and tried calling Kei'Mani, but each attempt went straight to voicemail. Kei'Mani's phone was dead. Desperate for any information, any reassurance that her granddaughter was safe, Dorothy contacted Spring Elementary School. She pleaded with the staff to speak with Kei'Mani, to have her call home immediately. But the school's response delivered a fresh wave of terror. Kei'Mani had not shown up for school that day. The principal, her teacher, and the gym teacher all confirmed her absence. The empty house on Elm Street, once a place of familiarity, now felt like the epicenter of a waking nightmare. Kei'Mani was gone. With the terrifying confirmation that Kei'Mani was not at school and the disturbing state of her home, Dorothy Latigue did what any guardian would do. She called for help. In a distressed call to 911, she reported her 13-year-old granddaughter missing. "This is my granddaughter," she explained to the dispatcher, confirming she had legal custody. "To the best of my understanding, she's just been missing this morning. I called her school and went up to her school, and they said she's not there." She provided Kei'Mani's description, black but often mistaken for Hispanic, and her last name. The call ended with the dispatcher assuring Dorothy that officers would be out soon. As the official police investigation commenced, Kei'Mani's family and the wider Toledo community sprang into action. The urgency was palpable. Flyers bearing Kei'Mani's smiling face were quickly printed and distributed throughout neighborhoods. Friends, relatives, and concerned citizens formed search parties, combing through local areas, hoping for any sign of the missing teen. Kei'Mani's mother, Tiara Caston, was devastated by the news. She traveled all the way from Cleveland to join the search efforts, her presence a testament to a mother's desperate hope. "I'd please be looking," she implored the public. "Because without y'all, I don't know that we have the manpower to do so." All forms of support help, whether it's a social media post, whether it's you hanging up a flyer, whether you just bringing up her name in conversation and making sure that people hear about her, it still makes a difference. Amidst the flurry of activity, Darnell Jones, Kei'Mani's father, appeared publicly alongside Dorothy Latigue. Together, they made televised appeals for Kei'Mani's safe return, their faces etched with worry. Darnell reiterated his account of Kei'Mani's late-night call about a potential break-in and his subsequent visit to the house with his cousin. However, the timeline of Kei'Mani's disappearance remained frustratingly muddled. While the official police report would later state that Kei'Mani was last seen around 12:30 a.m. on Tuesday, March 18th, Dorothy, in at least one early interview, mentioned coming home on Monday morning, March 17th, to find Kei'Mani gone. "It was Monday morning, and when I came home she wasn't here," Dorothy stated. Of course, she was supposed to have been on her way to school, but according to the way that the house was set up, once I got here, because it was in complete disarray, she wasn't here. This discrepancy, whether a misremembered detail in the initial shock or a genuine point of confusion, added another layer of complexity to an already bewildering case. The search for Kei'Mani was on, fueled by a grandmother's plea and a community's hope, but shadowed by unanswered questions. As the days ticked by with no sign of Kei'Mani, the behavior of her father, Darnell Jones, began to raise unsettling questions, particularly with his live-in girlfriend. Sources close to the investigation would later describe Darnell as nervous and evasive in the aftermath of Kei'Mani's disappearance, not acting like a typically grieving father. His girlfriend's unease intensified on Friday, March 21st, just 3 days after Kei'Mani was reported missing. Darnell made a strange and insistent request. He wanted her to turn off all the security cameras in her house. "He asked me to turn my cameras off," his girlfriend later recounted. "I have cameras in my house and he asked me to turn them off. And I was like, why would you want me to turn the cameras off?" He said, "Because I didn't come home till 5 o'clock that morning and he didn't want them to suspect anything because he didn't show up till 5. She thought to herself, "Well, if you don't have anything to hide, then why should I turn the cameras off?" Her gut feeling told her something was wrong, so despite his insistence, she secretly left the cameras running. Darnell, however, believed she had complied. Her decision proved pivotal. While his girlfriend was in another room, a relative of hers who was present at the house witnessed Darnell unloading items from his Ford Explorer SUV. He was seen sneaking these items into the basement and hiding them under the stairs. The relative informed Darnell's girlfriend, who then contacted detectives. Police obtained a search warrant. The items Darnell had so carefully tried to conceal were a heavy-duty rubber mat, the kind used to line the cargo area of an SUV, rolled up and tucked away. Alongside it was a pair of work boots, caked in mud. This was particularly suspicious because, according to his girlfriend, Darnell hadn't been to work in some time. There was no apparent reason for his boots to be in such a state. Darnell also confided in his girlfriend that he hadn't actually returned to their shared residence until around 5 raw or 5:30 a.m. on the morning Kei'Mani had gone missing. This directly contradicted his earlier statements to police and the public. where he implied he had gone home much earlier after leaving Dorothy's house around 12:30 a.m. When Darnell realized that the police had searched the basement and seized the mat and boots, he vanished. The hidden clues, captured by a camera he thought was off and observed by a watchful relative, had tightened the net, and Darnell Jones was now a fugitive. The investigation into Kei'Mani Latigue's disappearance was rapidly gaining momentum. Detectives meticulously sifted through evidence, focusing on the glaring inconsistencies in the stories provided by Darnell Jones and his cousin, Kei'Mani Jones Dixon, regarding their whereabouts on the night Kei'Mani vanished. The carefully constructed narrative Darnell had presented to the public and police was beginning to crumble under scrutiny. By March 23, 2025, authorities had gathered enough evidence to take decisive action. An abduction warrant was officially filed against Darnell Jones. Police records indicated he was the last person seen taking Kei'Mani from her guardian's home without consent. The charge hung heavy, painting Darnell not as a worried father, but as a prime suspect. The following day, March 24th, brought a chilling breakthrough. Investigators uncovered surveillance footage. The video showed Darnell Jones's vehicle driving up to an abandoned, previously fire-damaged house on Miami Street in East Toledo, approximately 3 miles from Kei'Mani's Elm Street residence. The footage captured Darnell getting out of his vehicle and going inside the derelict building. This was reported to have occurred shortly after Kei'Mani had gone missing. A police team was dispatched to the Miami Street location. The house was dilapidated, its charred remains a grim backdrop to the unfolding tragedy. On the second floor of the decaying structure, authorities made the discovery everyone had dreaded. They found the lifeless body of 13-year-old Kei'Mani Latigue. The scene was horrific. The Lucas County Coroner's Office would later determine that Kei'Mani had died from multiple incised wounds to her neck. Reports also indicated her hands had been dismembered, and there were signs of sexual assault. Her death was unequivocally ruled a homicide. As news of the discovery spread, a crowd gathered near the abandoned house. Among them was Kei'Mani's mother, Tiara Caston, her initial desperate pleas for information, turning into cries of unimaginable grief as the reality of her daughter's fate became clear. "Please say something. This is a baby," she had cried out earlier. Now, after a private discussion with authorities, the confirmation of the worst prompted Tiara to collapse to her knees, overcome by sorrow. The search for Kei'Mani was over, replaced by the horrifying certainty of her brutal murder. With the devastating discovery of Kei'Mani's body, the charges against Darnell Jones were immediately and grimly upgraded. He was no longer just wanted for abduction. He was now the prime suspect in his daughter's murder and felonious assault. The manhunt intensified. For 2 days, Darnell remained on the run, a fugitive eluding a net that was rapidly closing. The critical break came when Darnell made a phone call to his girlfriend. In that call, he admitted he was in Columbus, Ohio, hours away from Toledo. Terrified and desperate to distance herself from the horrifying crimes her boyfriend was now accused of, she immediately reported his location to the police. It was the tip they needed. Authorities in Columbus were alerted. On March 25, 2025, just 1 day after Kei'Mani's body was found, Darnell Jones was spotted walking through the Victorian Village neighborhood. Columbus police SWAT officers confronted him. Body cam footage would later reveal the tense moments. Officers shouted commands. "Dude, show me your fing hands right now! Pull your fing hand out!" Darnell, cornered and desperate, reportedly told officers, "Kill me, just kill me." He then allegedly reached towards his pocket, or by some accounts, brandished a firearm. In the high-pressure standoff, officers perceived a lethal threat. Shots rang out. "Shots fired! Shots fired!" an officer yelled. Darnell Jones was hit multiple times. He was quickly taken into custody and rushed to the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center in critical but stable condition. He would survive his injuries. At the time of his arrest, authorities found a gun and a walkie-talkie in his possession. The presence of the walkie-talkie raised immediate questions. Who had the other one? The arrest was a significant development, but the horror was compounded by subsequent revelations. While recovering in the hospital, Darnell Jones allegedly confessed to the crime. Dorothy Latigue, Kei'Mani's grandmother, revealed that Darnell had admitted to taking Kei'Mani against her will and then killing her with a knife. The manhunt had ended, not with a peaceful surrender, but with a violent confrontation and a chilling admission of guilt from a father accused of the ultimate betrayal. The arrest of Darnell Jones brought a measure of grim resolution, but it also cast a harsh light on a troubled past littered with violence and missed opportunities for intervention. Darnell, at 33, was no stranger to the law. His criminal record was extensive and alarming, painting a portrait of a man with a propensity for aggression and a disregard for legal authority. His documented encounters with the justice system stretched back to 2011, when he was just 19, with charges including resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and arson. In 2015, an argument escalated to him firing a gun at another man's feet, leading to a charge of being a felon in possession of a firearm due to being on probation at the time. He served about 2 years in jail for that, released in early 2017. Just months later, in August 2017, he was arrested again for smashing a man's face with a vehicle's alternator, resulting in a felonious assault charge for which he received probation. The pattern continued. In July 2019, neighbors called police after witnessing Darnell hurling 2 televisions from his balcony, followed by him choking his then-wife and threatening to throw her off as well. This led to domestic violence and assault charges. The assault charge was dismissed at the prosecutor's request, and he pleaded no contest to domestic violence, serving only 11 days in jail. An endangering children charge from 2021 was also dismissed. Then, in August 2022, he faced charges for being a felon in possession of a firearm, disorderly conduct while intoxicated, and possession of drug paraphernalia, for which he served 12 months in prison. He had a history of serious, violent offenses, often met with lenient consequences. Parallel to Darnell's violent history were disturbing reports concerning Kei'Mani's home life with her grandmother, Dorothy Latigue. Child Protective Services, CPS, had reportedly been called at least 3 times prior to Kei'Mani's death due to concerns about excessive physical discipline. Kayleen Harabedian, one of Kei'Mani's former 6th grade teachers at Bennett Venture Academy, stated that she and other school staff had contacted Children's Services multiple times due to concerning statements from Kei'Mani and visible injuries, including cuts and bruises, that they believed were non-accidental. "Our calls were not heard," Harabedian lamented. "Her voice was not heard. I think that had she been investigated more, this was looked more into, she would 100% be alive today." Some of Kei'Mani's classmates corroborated these concerns, stating that Kei'Mani had expressed fears about going home to her grandmother's house, and had once shown a classmate bruises on her arms, allegedly from a fight with her grandmother. Dorothy Latigue acknowledged the CPS visits, stating the school system had contacted them when Kei'Mani attended Bennett Academy. She said CPS did a case study and closed it, and denied abusing Kei'Mani. Yes, she was chastised whenever she was wrong or did things wrong. Other than that, she was not abused. Confusingly, Lucas County officials later stated they had no record of any call from a mandated reporter or community member for an entire year prior to her murder. "We have no record of anyone from Toledo Public Schools ever calling us with respect to Kei'Mani. We have no record of anyone calling us ever with concerns about Darnell Jones." The conflicting accounts painted a distressing picture of a child potentially caught between multiple points of failure, where warning signs may have been missed or inadequately addressed. With Darnell Jones in custody and recovering from his injuries, the legal process began to move forward. The Lucas County Prosecutor's Office swiftly prepared a formidable case against him. On April 4, 2025, a grand jury returned a 15-count indictment outlining the horrific nature of the crimes Kei'Mani Latigue had allegedly endured. The charges were severe and numerous: 4 counts of aggravated murder, each carrying capital specifications which made Darnell eligible for the death penalty. These specifications included committing the murder during a rape, a kidnapping, or an aggravated burglary, and committing the murder to escape detection for another offense. He also faced 2 counts of rape, 3 counts of kidnapping, 1 count of aggravated burglary, 2 counts of endangering children, one alleging abuse, the other torture or cruel abuse, both resulting in serious physical harm. 1 count of gross abuse of a corpse, and 2 counts of tampering with evidence. The indictment painted a chilling narrative of premeditation and brutality. During his arraignment, Darnell Jones, who also used the adoptive name Darnell Ogletree but confirmed his birth certificate said Jones, appeared before the judge. His bond was set at a staggering $4 million, and prosecutors formally announced their intention to seek the death penalty, underscoring the gravity of the charges. The court proceedings also brought Darnell's personal history into sharper focus. He disclosed a significant history of mental health diagnoses, including depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, ADHD, and ADD, for which he was taking prescribed medication. His attorneys, David Klukas, and a co-counsel, were appointed by the court, both certified by the Supreme Court of Ohio to handle capital cases. A notable ethical consideration arose during the arraignment. Defense attorney David Klukas' son, London Klukas, was an employee of the Lucas County Prosecutor's Office. The judge addressed this directly, ensuring that measures were in place to wall off London Klukas from any involvement in or discussion of the case. Darnell Jones confirmed he understood these measures and was satisfied with David Klukas continuing as his representation. Written waivers were filed. To each of the 15 counts and their attendant specifications, Darnell Jones, through his attorney, offered a plea: not guilty. The stage was set for a legal battle that would delve into the darkest aspects of human behavior and seek justice for a child whose life was so violently cut short. The murder of Kei'Mani Latigue sent tremors of grief, shock, and outrage through Toledo and beyond. Her violent death, allegedly at the hands of her own father, left the community reeling. In the raw aftermath, makeshift memorials sprang up, with flowers, candles, and heartfelt messages left at the abandoned house on Miami Street where her body was found. Vigils were held, bringing people together to mourn the bright, kind, intelligent girl whose life had been so cruelly extinguished. However, the house itself, a symbol of the horror, was later destroyed by a fire on April 19, 2025, which police believed to be arson. The investigation into the fire remained ongoing, though officials stated it would not hinder the murder investigation. Even in grief, divisions surfaced. A dispute arose between Kei'Mani's grandmother, Dorothy Latigue, and her mother, Tiara Caston, regarding funeral arrangements. As Kei'Mani's legal guardian at the time of her death, a judge ultimately ruled that Dorothy would be the one to plan the services. A public memorial service for Kei'Mani was held on Wednesday, April 9, 2025, at the West Toledo YMCA, with a separate private service for her family. She was later cremated. Amidst the sorrow, the courage of Darnell Jones's girlfriend resonated with many. Her decision not to turn off the security cameras, her observation of his suspicious actions, and her crucial tip to police leading to his capture were widely praised. She became a symbol of doing the right thing, of choosing truth over misguided loyalty, and protecting a child, even when the alleged abuser was someone close. Kei'Mani's death also forced a harsh reckoning with systemic failures. Local officials, council members, and community advocates began asking difficult questions. How had this happened? Why were warning signs apparently ignored? Councilwoman Teresa Morris stated, "It feels like every system that should have protected her failed her." Lucas County officials announced the formation of a task force to examine Child Protective Services procedures and broader child welfare issues, with a stated goal to ensure that every child and every family in Lucas County receives the protection and the care they deserve. One council member emphasized the need for action. When people make these reports, we need answers. We can't have our young people being murdered and abused. It has to stop. Kei'Mani Latigue was remembered as more than just a victim. She was an honor roll student at Spring Elementary, loved basketball, and was just days away from her 14th birthday and set to receive a kindness award, a testament to her character. Her future, filled with the promise of a sweet 16, learning to drive, prom, and graduation, was stolen. Her story became a tragic reminder of the vulnerability of children and a catalyst for a desperate call, for vigilance, for intervention, and for a renewed commitment to protect the community's most precious lives. The fight for justice for Kei'Mani was underway, but her loss left an indelible scar and a haunting question of what could have been.